Twitch, I mean, Twitch is really just pretty much, I mean, it's centered entirely around Hasan, right? I mean, like, that's, let's be honest, right? I do think that the FBI needs to look into a lot of these people that are advocating for violence and pushing for violence.
Alright, so in today's video, we're gonna be taking a look at how Asmongold is accusing Hasan Piker of politically radicalizing people, which has led to some really horrible stuff happening, which we're gonna get into later in this video. Alright, so first of all, I'm just gonna show you the clip of Asmongold.
So the ADL says when you openly support a murderous, anti-Semitic, U.S.-designated terrorist org calling for violence against all Jews, you minimize our fear and grief and embolden extremists. Now is the time for Twitch, YouTube, and X and all the other social media platforms to decide if their platforms or spaces to allow someone like Piker to spew hatred and pro-terrorist propaganda. The time to act is now. So do I think this is going to go anywhere? I'm going to be honest, guys. I think yes. I think that this is a bridge too far. Trying to play PR for a terrorist organization, this will be a domino effect. I don't think that... So a lot of you guys might not understand how much average companies hear the word anti-Semitism and they just freak out. They're like, oh shit, right? Like, oh no, we don't want to have anything to do with that, right? So the moment that they hear that and this happens, it's going to be very problematic. Dan would never. I don't think it's going to be his decision. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't. I think that if more people start talking about this, and especially if more reputable sources start talking about this, and by the way, the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, like, I mean, the ADL, right? I mean, I don't think the ADL is that great either, but I understand that they exercise a certain power that is respected in traditional, like, mainstream media and mainstream circles, right?
Alright, so real quick, let's just talk about the ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League. And basically, this is this non-governmental organization, an NGO, and their mission is to combat anti-Semitism as well as other forms of bigotry and discrimination. And now the thing about this is that the fact that the ADL now has noticed Hasan and the things that he's been saying, this is gonna be a massive problem for him, because you also saw how Asmongold pointed this out in this clip, because once you end up in this situation where proper organizations are now calling you out, it's not just that you're just this personality on the internet and you're just making videos and you're just streaming and things like that. Now things have gone to another level. Now organizations have taken note of you, and it also goes to show that these organizations now view you as important enough to call you out, because now they're not just viewing you as just some person on the internet. Now they actually view you as someone influential, because otherwise they really would not care. If they just thought that Hasan is just relatively irrelevant person, and that he's not important regarding like the overall narrative, and that like he's not important in terms of like changing people's opinions and things like that, then they would have just ignored him or like not talked about him and stuff like that. But now he's being pointed out, so yeah, he's gonna have a lot of problems because of this. And also in the clip, you saw how Asmongold said that, hey, look, this can become a serious problem for Twitch, because Twitch is this platform that has Hasan on it. And so by giving Hasan this platform, Twitch is involved in this situation as well, right? So now they're going to have to perhaps make this decision of like, okay, if the pressure becomes really, really bad, from a PR perspective, they might have to drop Hasan, right? Think about it. They might have to ban him or tell him that, hey, look, you can't say certain things anymore, because it's just making our platform look bad overall. So yeah, it's a pretty serious situation now, and so things have escalated. It's not what it used to be, Alright, so real quick, I just want to pause the video and say that it would really help me out if you could just subscribe to my channel, because I am trying to grow this channel, and so it really helps me out when people subscribe. Anyway, back to the video. And so now I'm going to show you this clip from this news channel, Fox News, and it's about this attack which was carried out on people which were in this march for showing solidarity with the Israeli hostages. And the thing about this is that this is something that came around the same time that, Asmongold was saying that, hey, there's all this radicalism now, this which is leftist radicalism. So basically, this is one of the things that he later on talks about. So just check out this clip because it's going to give you context about the attack that happened in the US very recently.
I'm able to confirm there are 6 victims, ages 67 to 88. All of them have been transported to local hospitals. This attack happened at a regularly scheduled weekly peaceful event. Witnesses are reporting that the subject used a makeshift flamethrower and threw an incendiary device into the crowd. The suspect was heard to yell, "Free Palestine," during the attack. The subject has been identified as Mohammed Sabri Solomon, and he's 45 years old. The FBI is processing the crime scene and the subject vehicle and interviewing key witnesses. We're assisting Boulder Police in providing technical, analytic, and additional forensic resources. As a result of these preliminary facts, it is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism.
Alright, so as you just saw, that was an extremely brutal attack. And the way that this links into the rest of what we're discussing in this video is that the attacker was heard to have yelled, "Free Palestine." So that's where, this becomes like this political thing. Because now, based off that, people are now saying, okay, so this was the real motive. Because think about it, right? So the actual march that he attacked was this march for solidarity with Israeli hostages. And then the attacker was someone who was yelling "Free Palestine," right? So that's what makes the incident political, because these are, two opposite political sides. And this is an example of the kind of like left-wing extremism that Asmongold was talking about. And so now I'm going to show you a clip of where the FBI director was talking about how they're actually now investigating this attack, right? And so then Asmongold actually replied to it. And so just check out how he replied to this, okay?
Y'all really need to get on top of some of these people online. They promote this shit and there's nothing ever happens. More online censorship? This isn't, guys, this is not more online censorship. It was never acceptable to make calls for violence and to promote terror organizations. This is not, guys, this is not censorship. This is the law. I don't want any new rules. All I want is the existing rules to be applied fairly to the people that are obviously breaking them.
Alright, so as you just saw right there, Asmongold replied to the FBI director, and he basically just typed out that, there's people online that are promoting this kind of stuff and, nothing ever happens to them, and so there's all this radicalization for violence, and so it needs to be stopped. And, this links into how he was talking about Hasan being one of the main people pushing for this kind of radicalization. And now keep in mind here, he didn't specifically name Hasan, but in the other clips, he does mention him quite a lot. So generally you can see how, he's really making this point. And now here's another clip of Asmongold. So check this out.
I think Reddit and Twitter are probably the two worst places for this type of radicalism. The FBI needs to be, and TikTok, yeah, TikTok's another one too. You're right. Twitch, I mean, Twitch is really just pretty much, I mean, it's centered entirely around Hasan, right? I mean, like that's let's be honest, right? I do think that the FBI needs to look into a lot of these people that are advocating for violence and pushing for violence, because I think that it's all over these platforms. It's not like it's something that's like just stated offhandedly or whatever. It's everywhere. And I'm not talking about somebody who's like saying, I hate Israel, fuck Israel. I'm saying somebody who's saying we should burn Israelis, you know, Israelis deserve to suffer for this. You know, like if you punch somebody like this or you hurt them, it's okay. Like there are so many overt calls for violence that are happening on social media right now that I don't even think that we need to get into the gray areas, because there are so many black and white examples right now. And nothing is happening to these people, and there's no consequences for it. The websites aren't moderating it, and they're just letting these people run wild. I mean, really, like whenever you see Hasan reading the Israeli Shooters Manifesto, and the chat, his sub-only chat in emote-only mode is spamming his emote for being subscribed to him, and it's a heart emote. And as far as I know, these people probably never got banned. There's nothing that ever, I don't know, like, do they still have their account?
All right, so as you just saw, now he was more direct, and he directly did mention Hasan and Twitch, and he said how, you know, people like Hasan on platforms such as Twitch, as well as other platforms, aren't really being moderated, and they aren't really being stopped when, you know, there's like calls for violence and stuff like that. And overall, the point that he's making is that it's not about censoring people's discussion regarding any issue, but rather it's about specifically stopping calls for violence, because that's the exception to free speech. You know, that's the one thing you can't do. So that's the thing that he's pointing out, where like, hey, you know, sure, many different people have different opinions about things, and, you know, they're free to discuss them, and, you know, they're free to express that stuff. But once it gets to this, where, you know, now you're calling for violence, at that point, you know, that's where you draw the line. And so, yeah, overall, this is really just the main thing that Asmongold has been saying, which is that, you know, he says that there's this genuine problem with these leftists online who are now, you know, making all these calls for violence, and they're promoting all this extremism and stuff like that, and it's beginning to radicalize people because of just how big the followings of these people are, and just how much, you know, they're not facing consequences, and they're not being moderated properly and things like that. So it's not that he has a problem with, you know, free speech and, you know, people being able to debate things and to express themselves, but rather, you know, he has a problem with the calls to violence, because in one of the clips that I shared with you earlier, you can see how he says that, hey, look, this isn't censorship. I don't have an issue with people discussing things. It's just that he wants the existing rules to actually be implemented against the people who are like very obviously breaking those rules. So it's not that, you know, he's calling for like additional rules and like censorship and stuff like that. And yeah, so overall, this is the situation. And with all that being said, guys, this is Alexi signing out.